Ah, Barbie, Barbara, Miss Roberts, my good friend Babs. We know her, we love her, she hopefully doesn't need any kind of huge introduction. She's Barbie, and obviously I'm a pretty big fan of Barbie. I have been basically my whole life. This is a channel revolving around fashion dolls, and what bigger fashion doll is there than Barbie? But with all the prestige and fame of being indisputably the #1 fashion doll in the world, also comes no small amount of scandal and controversy. And it makes sense. Barbie has had thousands of unique dolls among different characters and concepts, and not all of them are going to be received very well. That's just the reality of it, and some of this criticism is warranted. There's obviously an ongoing debate going on about how Barbie affects body image in young children, and while I do think this debate tends to get out of control and is prone to a lot of misinformation, it's still like a conversation we do need to be having. And even aside from that, Barbie has had her fair share of missteps over the years, but this video is not about those. This video is about all the completely unwarranted, unusual, unnecessary, and frankly mean-spirited ways the general public has tried to tear my girl down. Like, for instance, that time a lot of people on Twitter were angry that the Tokyo Olympics line didn't include an Asian doll, despite one being right there in the picture they were all posting. Like, literally, right there. See, when you're as popular as Barbie, you become a sort of scapegoat, an easy punching bag for things that are very much not your fault, and you become the center of some truly dumb and ridiculous controversies. And the sad part is, Barbie can't even defend herself. She's not real, so I have to do it for her. So yeah, we're just going to go through some of what I think are Barbie's dumbest controversies, and talk about why, when faced with a little plastic woman barely a foot tall, for some reason a lot of people tend to lose all common sense. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first one I want to talk about dates back to Barbie's inception, the first Barbie. She's controversial because a lot of people seem to believe that she was based on a sex toy. At this point, it's not exactly a secret that the very first Barbie doll was a little more than inspired by an already existing fashion doll, a German novelty doll called Bild Lilly, who was based on a comic strip character named Lily in the tabloid newspaper Bild, hence Bild Lilly. Ruth Handler, Mattel's co-founder, saw Lily as proof that fashion dolls could be produced with the appearance of an adult woman, and modified Lily dolls she bought into the first Barbie. So, both the comic strip and the Lily doll were originally intended for adult audiences. And if you try to look up Lily's connection to Barbie, there are no small amount of articles or videos that paint a very negative light of Lily. Basically, you'll see titles like, "Meet Lily, the naughty call girl doll that became Barbie," or "The German sex doll that inspired America's most beloved toy," or "Dear God, Barbie was based on a cartoon prostitute who'd do anything for money." Time magazine called the Lily doll a prostitute gag gift handed out at bachelor parties. A lot, and I mean a lot, of people seem to think that the doll that would become Barbie was literally some kind of sex toy from a pornographic comic strip sold exclusively to adult men who, I don't know what they think these men did with these hard plastic, anatomically incorrect dolls. I don't want to know, but this is a very enduring bit of trivia that follows Barbie around. But who is Lily? Well, like I said, it's true that her comic was for adults, but Lily was not a sex worker, and the comic strip, though risque, was pretty safe for work. I mean, maybe not for the 50s, but even so. Basically, a lot of the humor revolved around Lily being a confident and flirty working woman who wasn't shy about her good looks and wanted to marry into money. It was frequently suggestive and obviously for a male audience, but never, hardcore. She even had a number of adult women fans as well, due to the somewhat progressive nature of her being such an independent female character. The misconception that Lily was a sex worker seems to come from a mistranslation somewhere along the line, I think. Apparently she worked as a secretary, so she took calls, and that turned into call girl somewhere along the line, which obviously has a very different connotation. So the doll herself was more of a novelty for men who were fans of the character, but there wasn't anything like sexual or inappropriate about her. In fact, the doll would even become popular with children, and the company that made Lily dolls leaned into this. Other toy companies even produced doll houses and accessories to scale with Lily to cash in on this. Obviously, this couldn't have been possible if Build Lily dolls were ever sold or marketed or functioned as sex toys. There is another issue entirely here though, which is that the first Barbie was accused of plagiarizing the Build Lily doll, which I actually talk a little more about in another video of mine, all about fashion dolls that have been accused of plagiarism. So watch that if you're curious, wink wink, nudge nudge. But moving on. In 1992, Mattel released Teen Talk Barbie. It was not Mattel's first foray into talking dolls, but probably their most memorable. The way the dolls worked, the voice chips inside had 4 randomly selected phrases out of 270 possible ones. The most controversial of these, quote, "Math class is tough." Math class is tough. A combined effort of feminist and educator groups such as National Council of Teachers of Mathematics and American Association of University Women greatly objected to this phrase. Mattel was accused of discouraging young girls from studying math and science, of contributing to stereotypes that girls are not as smart as boys, of promoting the idea that girls just need to shop and wear pretty dresses and not study and whatnot.
There's no question that there is a stereotype that exists for young girls, which is that math is hard, I can't do math, or science is hard, I can't do science, or it's not meant for me. I have a second grade daughter who's doing multiplication tables here in her first month of school, and the last message I want her to get is that for some reason math is any more challenging to her than any other subject that she's studying.
The problem here is that, like I mentioned, these phrases were randomly selected. There were 270 possible ones. An estimated only 1.5% actually said math class is tough. Sure, there were others like, will we ever have enough clothes? But also ones like, I love school, don't you? And even, I'm studying to be a doctor. And let's face it, math class is tough. Like, it is. And yes, in the early 90s, and even today, honestly, there were significant barriers for women wishing to enter into STEM careers. But let's not worry about any of the systemic issues or the deep-seated social problems that contribute to that. No, it's Barbie's fault for having trouble in her high school math class. Just imagine all the female mathematicians or astronauts or scientists that we would have today if 1.5% of Teen Talk Barbies in 1992 didn't think math class was tough. Following the media frenzy brought on by this, Mattel did pull the phrase from future Teen Talk Barbies produced and offered to switch the offending dolls with ones that didn't include the phrase for any parents that were worried about their little girls growing up to be adults unable to do long division. The controversy also inspired a Simpsons episode and a protest by a group of performing artists calling themselves the Barbie Liberation Organization, who switched the voice chips of Teen Talk Barbies with that of speaking G.I. Joes, then returned the repackaged dolls to shelves. But that whole situation is really weird. It happened, yeah, but likely not to the extent that most people think. It's very hard to tell what was real and what was completely made up. I'd encourage doing your own research on this one. Now, let's move on to 2003, the release of the Happy Family line featuring the character Midge. Now, originally, Midge was a character released in 1963, sold then as Barbie's best friend. She was reintroduced in the 80s and 90s, again as one of Barbie's friends. In 1991, she was released in a wedding set. Her husband, Alan, was also a character from the 60s, back then introduced as Ken's buddy and Midge's boyfriend. So, Barbie and her friends' ages have always been kind of ambiguous. Sometimes Barbie is clearly an adult, sometimes she's clearly a teenager, it just depends on the line. And that's not a particularly difficult reality to accept, I don't think, not for me anyways. But for some people, the idea of Midge being a fully grown adult woman for one product line, required just too much brain power. So, for context, one of the initial Happy Family releases involved Midge being visibly pregnant. The baby bump was actually magnetic and held a baby inside of it, which is, yes, a very sanitized and inaccurate representation of pregnancy and childbirth, but that really wasn't a lot of people's issues with the doll. A lot of parents seem to think that Midge promoted teen pregnancy. A lot also criticized the fact that she was apparently unmarried, which obviously untrue, but it did prompt Mattel to include a wedding ring in subsequent releases. Now, I don't know about you, but this version of Midge, to me, is very clearly an adult woman. I mean, just look at her sensible button-up shirt and receding hairline. Still, there were enough complaints that the entire Happy Family line was pulled from shelves by certain retailers. Maybe it was Mattel's mistake for putting Midge into this line instead of just a new character, but I also don't know if that would have fixed anything. The idea of a pregnant doll, regardless, is always going to be a little too much for a lot of people, and I am of the opinion that pregnancy and childbirth is like a thing that happens to a very significant portion of the population, and it deserves to be destigmatized, and Barbie is probably a pretty good tool for that, but like always, she was just a little bit ahead of her time. Now moving on to 2008. At this point, Mattel had already produced more than a few Barbie dolls based on popular DC Comics characters. Supergirl, Batgirl, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy all came and went without too much uproar. But then came a doll based on the character Black Canary, dressed fairly similarly to the kind of costume she had worn pretty regularly throughout all her appearances: a leather jacket, black leotard, and fishnet tights. And when parents saw this doll, I can only assume they burst into flames right there in the toy aisle.
KTLA's Marco Gonzalez is live at Mattel headquarters with more on what some are calling S&M Barbie.
They want kids to grow up too fast, basically.
Especially from Christian groups. The Christian Voice actually said this, and I'm quoting them: "Barbie has always been on the tardy side, and this is taking it too far. A children's doll in sexually suggestive clothing is irresponsible. It's filth."
I was a preteen around this time and actually remember this whole situation, but Black Canary Barbie was lambasted for, well, reasons I feel should be pretty obvious at this point. Basically, any gross and degrading word you can think of to refer to a sex worker, this doll was called. According to them, she was highly inappropriate for children and set a terrible example for young girls. The thing is, this doll was not particularly for young girls. She was a black label Barbie, which essentially meant playline for an adult audience. She was, however, sold alongside all the other Barbies, which is mainly due to there just being no special section for adult collector Barbies. So I guess I understand the confusion, but also, she's literally just based on a character who wears this outfit like it's really not that big of a deal. And maybe there is a conversation to be had about the representation of female characters in superhero comics, but we're not going to do all that right now. Rather, I just want to raise the point that people only had an issue with this doll because she was a girl's product. 2 aisles over in the boys section, you can find a multitude of action figures based on female characters wearing outfits probably way worse than this one. Heck, you can probably find a Black Canary figure. And obviously there are people who will criticize boys' toys too, but never for the same reasons and never to the extent that girls' toys are subjected to. Wonder why that is. Anyways, the very next year, in 2009, Mattel released Totally Stylin' Tattoos Barbie. And I'm not entirely sure what was happening around this time, but for some reason tattoos were a very popular concept with fashion dolls, despite almost every single time ending up in parent complaints and controversies. Maybe the toy companies just thought it was a good way to end up on the news, I don't know. Anyways, obviously, parents were angry at this Barbie for promoting tattoos, many thinking it was an inappropriate thing to feature in a children's toy. You can probably guess that I don't think it's that big of a deal, any more than like the temporary tattoos we all got as kids, but I can at least understand where this controversy came from. But I bring this up because if you look at any news article about this particular Barbie written after the fact, you'll notice that they mention this doll was controversial because she came with a lower back tattoo. And they all feature the exact same image of Barbie with a lower back tattoo with Ken's name on it. Which, no, this isn't true. They're just going on the internet and telling lies. You can put the tattoos anywhere on Barbie and none of them had Ken's name. None of them look like this. So, yeah, always make sure to do your fact checking. In any case, similar controversies would follow with the Tokidoki Barbies in 2010 who were heavily tattooed, but again, these were not for kids. They were quite expensive and limited edition, and I would not think that the concept of Barbies for adult collectors is that strange of a concept, but it's like the thought just doesn't even cross people's minds. And we're nearing the end here, so to round out this list of dumb controversies, I just want to bring up that Twitter Olympics thing again one more time because My god, that was stupid. Just absolute brainless behavior. Obviously, Barbie has had way more controversies than this, but many of them are more far-reaching and involve more in-depth discussions, rather than these which are just some very specific instances. And what do we do with this information? Well, there's probably some broad commentary here about media frenzies, or ethics in journalism, or even just Barbie's role in society, but at the end of the day, I just made this video because I was annoyed and sick of seeing the same posts over and over and over about how quote-unquote controversial Barbie is. Like, God, I get it. She weighed 110 pounds and came with a book that had a joke in very poor taste in 1965. Can we talk about literally anything else? It seems like no matter how influential or iconic or far-reaching Barbie is, it all gets boiled down to the same 5 or 6 isolated incidents where something just went wrong. And half the time, it's not even because of something that matters, or it's just like a blatant lie that even major news outlets are too lazy to verify. But regardless, this was a fun video to make. I'm really in my natural element when I get to be cynical and spiteful about something. And I hope, if nothing else, this video makes you a little more discerning about things you see on the internet when there's like a big outrage about something. Because, let's face it, it doesn't matter what the subject is, people just love to be mad at things. And, at the end of it all, Barbie is still here, she's still the reigning queen of the doll industry, and it's going to take a lot more than some poorly researched listicles to change that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to tell me down below what your favorite Barbie controversy is, be it a dumb one like these or maybe one of her more legitimate ones. Do you perhaps own any of these forbidden Barbies? Or maybe you had them as a child and now you're a poorly adjusted adult because of it? Tell me all about it. But once you're done with that, be sure to like and subscribe for any future fashion doll content. Thank you!